All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to Building Texas Business Live. So honored tonight, one, to have all you here, but especially to have Ryan and Crystal Waugh, good friends of ours, here with us tonight to share their story. We started this podcast a year and a half ago. This is episode 40. So yes,
wow,
landmark, and so yeah, it's all about meeting and hearing the stories of entrepreneurs and business owners. So sit back, enjoy your wine, and we're going to learn a little bit more about Ryan and Crystal's story. So thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
We're thrilled. This is fun.
Yeah. So let's. I always start the podcast off asking someone, what you're known for. So we kind of know what you're known for. But the other part of that question is, what inspired you to get into the business you're in? And yours is pretty unique and special. So Ryan, can you start with what inspired you to be a winemaker and start a winery?
Yeah, well, I brought a special prop.
Brought a display.
Awesome.
Brought a display. So
okay.
I grew up in Oregon, rural Oregon, and I got a scholarship to Santa Clara. And I wanted to be a doctor, so I was in the biochemistry program there. And my freshman year, I met a girl.
Not Crystal.
Not Crystal. We'll call
Everyone
her Courtney.
Yeah.
Because that was her name.
We'll call her Courtney.
Anyway, I met Courtney, and her dad, I think, didn't really know what to do with a young man from Oregon. It was about a week before my 18th birthday, and he looked at me on a Saturday afternoon and he said, "Hey, would you like to open up a bottle of wine from the year you were born?" And I've kind of made it a point in my life to say yes to everything unless it's illegal. I'm not going to tell you I've never done anything illegal.
Did I tell you we're recording this?
Yes.
Right.
So I'm a big yes, right? Because life and experiences, there's so many things to experience, and saying yes just feels better than no. So I've just kind of done that my whole life. So I said yes to this, even though I'd never had wine. My family weren't big alcohol drinkers, and definitely not wine. And we went into his cellar, and he said, "Pick out a bottle of wine." And I went over to this case. It was an unfinished cellar. It was like the underneath portion of his house. And I went over and just picked out a bottle. And I looked at him and I said, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And he goes, "Man, I have no idea. I drink vodka." And I was like, I'm holding this bottle like, what is happening right now? Like, I'm underneath his house and I've got this wine and what? And he goes, "Grab two." I was like, okay. 2 bottles upstairs. We open it and he starts swirling and he's smelling it. So I'm awkwardly swirling, remember the first time you're swirling? And I was like, oh goodness. And I put my nose in that glass and my whole world changed. And in that moment, everything went dark. His name's Ted. Ted was no longer there. It was like a movie where everything went dark, and it was me and this bottle and this glass of wine, and it just was super infectious to me. And I had to figure out what made this. He let me keep the bottle, and from there I ended up going to work out in a vineyard. That was my job during college. My mentor worked at a winery outside in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and I remember back then in the 90s, you didn't have any Google, so I had to go through the Yellow Pages wineries. Oh, great. And I started at A, and I called them all. And it wasn't until I got to S, I got to Savannah Chanel, and I dialed that number, and Michael McNeil called. Or he picked up the phone, and I was like, oh, and I asked him if I could get a job, and he goes, oh, yeah, sure. Hey, why don't you come up here? And I was like, really? That's great. He threw me out in a vineyard, and that was 28 harvests ago. So that's all I've done in my career is grow grapes and make wine. And I brought that bottle for everybody to see. So one of our customers, who are amazing, are Fockers. We call them the Fockers. So that, yeah, you get Focked and you become a Focker, and it's all great. But that stands for Friends of Waugh Club. Chris is one.
Thank you for clarifying what it was before you said I was one.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Anyway, one of our customers accidentally broke it in 2003, but my beautiful wife put it into a shadow box, and this sits in our house. When you walk in, it hangs in our entryway. And so it's always a reminder, every Waugh wine you're ever going to have, every time I grow grapes, every time I taste a grape, every time I do anything in winemaking, I always think about that moment with that wine and try to emulate that in the best way I can, right? And it doesn't have to just be Cab. When I'm making Pinot or anything, it doesn't matter because it's a feel, right? Like wine it's the way it feels on the palate. It's the fun thing about wine. Like the cool thing about wine is not the alcohol, right? That's the cool shit about spirits, right? That's why we drink spirits. Sorry, I swore.
Yeah.
First time.
That's all right.
Hopefully the last. Anyway, what we really love about wine is all the stuff, the aromas, the color, the flavor, the feel of it. I mean, all of those things, right? That's what makes it so amazing and remarkable. But anyway, this is how it started.
And that's a bottle of Stag's Leap?
This is a 1976 Stag's Leap Wine Cellars Cabernet Sauvignon made by Warren Wynarski. So this was the year that in 1976 there was a very famous tasting in Paris known as the Taste Heard Round the World that they put on in Paris, and they took the most expensive Chardonnays from Burgundy and the most expensive Bordeaux's from Bordeaux. And then they took the Napa Valley Chard and the Napa Valley Cabs, and they did them double blind. So nobody knew what they were tasting. And both the Montelena Chardonnay came in one in the Chardonnay, one best Chardonnay in the world. And the 1973 vintage of Stag's Leap Wine Cellars won that tasting as the best Cabernet in the world. And that's what shot Napa to the moon, and it hasn't stopped, which is kind of wild.
Very cool.
Yeah. Super.
That's great.
Anyway, there you go.
Okay, so that was the inspiration.
That's my baby.
How did you get, I mean, so then you had
Actually,
to
this
start
is
a
my
business, right?
Oh, thank you.
Easy now.
Get excited.
So you start this business, this winery.
Yes, sir.
And I know having, in the early days, you then meet Crystal. So tell us maybe a little bit about what it was like to just go on your own to start something from scratch, and then how does Crystal come into the picture, and then maybe you can share, Crystal, a little bit about your role and how y'all, being in a family business is one thing, but husband and wife working together all day, every day is a whole nother ball of wax, right? So
yeah.
Yes.
Well, it's been 18 years, and I would probably be the equivalent of like a struggling actor or writer in Los Angeles, like still, if it wasn't for Crystal. And it was March 5th of 2004. I started out in 2000 making wine in a garage in a house that I was renting in Napa, a real terrible place.
You
Really
heard it,
terrible.
You know it was coming.
Like it was like termites holding hands. So awful. Built in the 50s, and it was awful. She only stayed there one time, and then had to move. Had to move. Anyway, I got asked to do a tasting at the Villaggio, which is a very famous hotel in Yountville. And I'm making maybe 300-400 cases at the time, and they invited me to pour my wine on a Friday night for guests when they arrive and get exposure and whatever. I didn't have a tasting room, didn't have a winery. I was just making wine. And so I'm there, I'm all set up, and this group of 10 girls walk in, and they're super loud, everybody's going crazy, and the bride walks up to me, and she said, I'm getting married in a couple months, and I got all my girls here, and we're a bachelorette party, whatever. I was like, oh, sweet. So I'm like, hey, Zinfandel. She comes up for another glass. I'm like, we're celebrating. And she comes up for a third glass, and I was like, wow, she really likes this. It's great. And it turns out that she went back to Kathy Tortomasi. Kathy, if you're listening to this, she goes back to the group, and she wants to come up for a fourth glass, but she's embarrassed. So she's asking all her girlfriends, who hasn't been up there for wine? So one of them hadn't been up there, and she came up and asked for some Zin, and we got married a year later. So that's how I met Crystal Waugh, sweet thing, and 18 years. And it turns out she changed my life in many, many, many ways. Most importantly, personally, I was a little lost, as you can tell. I'm a very passionate person, and sometimes you can go off course a little bit. And most, I hate saying, I am an artist, which means I'm a little crazy. And so Crystal is not. She is my center. She's my rock. She's everything. And when I met
I didn't
her,
bring Kleenex up
I know.
here, okay? So, no.
when I met her, I was selling wine everywhere. I was doing all this stuff and, private tastings, and I was doing wholesale. I was doing all this. Didn't really have any focus. I was just seat in my pants, right? Like, I just love growing grapes and I love making wine and, no real focus. And she came in and just stabilized everything. And we went from 300, 400 cases to the 3,000 to 4,000 that we are now, almost all direct to consumer, all because of Crystal. We have a lot of wine club members, and all of them have Crystal's cell phone. They all text her. She manages all their accounts. She knows their kids, their cats, their dogs, their whatever. She is a total badass.
Well, that's a great segue. I want to talk to the badass now.
You should.
So Crystal, how bad was it when you stepped in? What were some of the things you did to help organize this business? And what experience did you have before that doing that?
Well, so I didn't have any professional wine experience. I had professional happy hour experience, like maybe a lot of y'all do, right? So I drank wine, loved wine, obviously went on this Napa trip. But I started my career at Neiman Marcus. So I went through their executive training program back in January of 1994. So that dates us a little bit, right? So I did that whole track. I did the buying, I did the store management, and then I, instead of going back into buying, I skipped into HR. I went into recruiting because I love people. And I love just interacting. I love being out there. I love selling the company that I worked for and the wonderful programs. And that whole customer service aspect is huge that I learned there. That all of that really transitioned over to what we do with Waugh. So that's how I spent the first, I graduated from A&M in December of, yes! Yay!
For those of you that might be listening that aren't from Texas, those are Aggies.
Right. So that was December of 93. I moved to Dallas. I'm from Houston. I grew up here, but I moved to Dallas for the job. And when I met Ryan, I was still with Neiman Marcus. So I was there 11 years. I don't know. Would I still be there? Who knows? What the course of your life is going to be. Right. Things happen. Sure. And did anybody ever think I'd move to California? Probably not. But y'all know about the vacation that I took and met him and moved out there. So when I did move out there, I originally I went to work for Williams-Sonoma. So I had to go find another great company, and I did corporate recruiting for them in San Francisco. And it wasn't until January of 2009. Mm-hmm. I was the financial stability with that. As he's talking about, what we do it's crazy. It's farming, it's winemaking, and whatever you make, you have to sell if you're going to make any money and live. So you never know what that's going to look like. And if you want to grow, obviously you have to put more into it. So it was really nice to have that kind of corporate stability for a while. So I did that when I moved to California. I guess it was in 2005. I left Neiman's. I went to work for Williams-Sonoma, did corporate recruiting there. I did the whole commute back and forth between Napa and San Francisco. That was brutal. So I understand the traffic situation. But once I got on board, we started changing our focus from, there was focus. He doesn't give himself enough credit. He really doesn't. He had done amazing to this point, but it was mostly wholesale at this point, and we were only maybe 500 cases, so we didn't even make that much. So we flipped the model, and we together, he gives me all the credit. It's not all me, but I focused on the direct to consumer. So we flipped the model from mostly wholesale to mostly direct to consumer. Obviously, the margins are very different. And we had a great base to work with because of what he had already built to this point. So this was in 2005. You started in 2000. So there was a good 4 to 5 years of a customer base that Ryan had built. And so we utilized that and started growing our wine club. And we flipped the model, and to this day, we're probably 92% direct to consumer, primarily wine club, and we do a little bit of wholesale. So that's the main thing that I did. And it was really just customer focus. And he's always been really interactive with the customers, even at that time before you met me. And it just I gave him the ability to go focus in the vineyard and do what he loves, which you've heard from him. And you can see the passion in what he says is to grow the grapes, manage the vineyards, make the wine. And he's great at selling it, and he loves doing tastings, but that's where he wants to be. So I gave him the ability to focus more of his time there and to perfect his art while I was managing and working with customers, which I love because I was a recruiter and love people. And it really just, it just worked out really well.
Perfect, a perfect team.
See?
Yeah.
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 No, sorry, Crystal. So, I mean, I love wine, and I think most people here do. So what y'all do sounds like the coolest job in the world. And I'm sure, like anything, when you do it every day, maybe not so much. But what was the biggest maybe surprise for you when you stepped into the wine business to going, like, oh my gosh?
Oh my gosh. I would say I didn't, what everybody kind of sees is what I saw before too, which is like the sexy part of it. It's drinking that bottle of wine, having that glass of wine, making memories with people that you're hanging out with, which is wonderful. And that's what the end consumer should be doing. But all of the work that goes in behind the scenes, I mean, it is a very, very physical, very demanding, very complicated, very hard, difficult job to be a grape grower and a winemaker. Not all winemakers grow their own grapes. Not all grape growers make wine, but this one does both. So between the two of us, we do everything from literally farming to end consumer. So, but for me, the biggest surprise was just all that went into it, which there always has to be behind the scenes. You just don't know what it is. I just didn't realize how physical it was. Like, your back and your knees and your elbow. Yeah.
So then, thinking about the business itself, I mean, Ryan, what were some of the lessons you learned that going from that kind of artist mentality and all I just want to do is my passion and my love I need to have some discipline about some things to actually be able to make money. What were some of the lessons you learned that helped you focus on the making money part so the business could be sustainable?
Mm-hmm. How do you how do you set aside your love and your passion? Like I get up in the morning and that's what I lead with. And that's hard. I mean, you can't be emotional with the numbers. They don't give anything back to you. You know what I mean?
When they feed you.
Looking at P&Ls and balance sheets, it's not like you're getting any love from them, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
And so that was really hard, but I would say the biggest lesson, and I'm not kidding. I know we're doing this podcast with our favorite attorney, but I never had one. And I should have had a lawyer. Should have had a good one, but one would have been great. And I failed to. I got enamored. Michael McNeil, who's my mentor, and I got caught up in all that, and I'm really good at it. Like, I'm really good at it. And so I just failed. I mean, I just didn't set things up properly. I didn't do the right thing for our business. So I've been through lots of different partnerships. The one thing I've never done, and I'm not sure why, I never put our Waugh family wines business in jeopardy into anything that we've done. We've only ever been the owners of it. But I've done all these other things early on and failed miserably, like really bad.
So is that picking bad partners? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I'm not sure it's the partners themselves, right? Like, I had a lot to do with it too. It was not, when you don't sit down and have the proper agreements in place, it means you probably didn't have the proper conversations that you needed to have, right, in order to formulate a plan and structure that makes sense. I mean, and I've done that at least 2 like epic fails. I mean, they're now funny and we can laugh about them, Crystal and I, but they were not funny.
It was not fun.
Time heals all wounds, but you bring up a couple of good points. We tell clients all the time, if you have this entity you started, it's not always good to bring in partners or even key employees. There's other ways to incentivize them, but maintain ownership. Right. So you at least did that right in the key part of your business.
I did, and honestly, I don't know why.
Sometimes lucky.
Luck.
A little bit of luck, I think.
Whatever.
Yeah.
The other thing is having that hard conversation up front, because on the beginning of any venture, everyone gets along, and we see people try to save money on the front end by not hiring a lawyer and just putting it together. And I think the phrase we use up here is, if you invest a little bit up front, it'll save you 10x on the back. Yeah. And when things go bad and you did LegalZoom and that agreement doesn't cover half the stuff that you need, it's a 10x legal bill.
Do you know LegalZoom?
Oh, I do.
Okay.
So
closed that account like 10 years ago.
Boom. No LegalZoom.
Crystal, how about you? I mean, you obviously, Crystal, you had a business background, a corporate background, but then you stepped into this kind of effectively a startup, family-owned business. What were some of the lessons learned in having to manage and run a small company?
I mean, for me, we obviously have a lot in common, but we are very different. So he is Mr. Risk Taker, Mr. just wants to say yes to everything, and I am very conservative, and I came from a corporate background, so I'm used to structure and things working in a certain way. And so, jumping into that there was a big learning curve for me jumping into that, and it was scary, I've got to say. Like when we decided, it was in 2009, of course, that's really kind of a terrible time for me to leave the corporate job, actually, if we're thinking back on dates now.
Yeah.
Really, let's do it in...
Lehman Brothers dies in September of 2008, and she leaves her job in January of 2009. What could possibly go wrong?
Right. Geniuses right here.
I was all about it.
What a great idea.
What a great idea. So here you go. Don't take any advice from us. But it just was
we lost all our stock in Enron, so F it. We're fine.
It's all going to be fine. It's fine. I don't know. It was hard for me to take that leap of leaving the corporate world into jumping into this, but I desperately wanted to be involved in it on a day-to-day basis. I was I was involved in it from a distance, but I was in San Francisco all the time, and he was in Napa. That's very
difficult. And he was in jeans, and you were dressing up.
Yes, I was dressed up, and I sat in traffic for 4 hours a day. Yeah, he doesn't have a blazer. We talked about this.
Right.
There's no suits.
That's right.
But anyway, it just... for me, my biggest challenge was kind of adjusting to this. The unknown was, not that you ever really know. None of us know what's going to happen tomorrow necessarily. You do in some aspects of your life, but really it's like the unknown of your financial well-being. And I'm not going to say it makes you work harder, because I worked just as hard, but for me it was just scary not knowing. Yeah. And I'm that person. I'm also that type A personality that's why I was always in the corporate job, which I still love and adore, and I'm not in it anymore. I still appreciate that, but I have learned to really appreciate this environment, and I think I've thrived in it. And I definitely think because I'm so conservative and because I had that structured background, that's what really helped me to ground, for us to kind of meet in the middle, and him to bring me out of, it doesn't always have to be like this, and this. And I'm like, it doesn't always have to be like just whatever, anything, But so that was the most challenging part for me, and figuring out how to function successfully in that environment. And I don't know exactly how I did that, to be honest with you. It just day to day. You learn as you go.
Survive.
You just survive. You learn day to day.
We have never had a conversation formally about our roles in the company. We don't have weekly meetings, or we don't have meetings about, you're doing that, you're doing that. It's very clear what each of us do, but it just happened organically. I grow grapes, I make wine, I make vodka, I do the whatever, we're there, and then I step into the sales. But she does all the back end and all the customers and all of that work, all the shipping, it's crazy. And we both look at each other, we're like, I couldn't do that job.
Yeah. Well,
I couldn't do this job, you're going to do my job.
Well, you said what I was thinking. You both play to each other's strengths and allow those strengths to flourish. And
and you just kind of figure it out.
Without formally discussing it.
Yeah.
So it's hard to give.
Kind of wild. And we think about that a lot. We're like, man, we're super lucky because we're with each other all day, every day.
All of our friends are
I
like,
still
how?
can't get enough.
How do you work with your spouse? I don't. It just works.
Well, because you drink wine all day.
People think that's what we do, but that's not
clearly
right.
the answer. Okay, so now we'll talk a little bit about a transition that led to us meeting one another, and that was like so many businesses that we've seen over the last couple of years. You're in California and you moved to Texas. We've had the great fortune to help a lot of companies in that transition, you included. So tell us what led to that and how's that transition going?
Take that one? Well, okay, I'll start with what led to that. First of all, they say you can't take the Texas out of the girl. And we always come back. It just is it's a fact. I didn't know.
Maybe can you zoom in on the cowboy boots? All right, let's do that.
I didn't know we were coming back, but honestly, the conversation started in 2017. If y'all remember, there have been so many fires you might not remember, but the big fire in 2017, which was kind of the first one in Napa, the first big one in Napa since like many years prior, where it literally since the 80s, since it really surrounded Napa, jumped a highway, went into Santa Rosa. And, we were affected by it, not only as being a part of the community because it was just terrifying, but also, the winery facility that we built, the entire property burned down. It's a 42-acre parcel of land, and, the fire actually started, it was called the Atlas Fire, the first one. Right? It was called the Atlas Fire. Yeah, it started on Atlas Peak, which connects to Soda Canyon, which is where we were. And so the entire thing burned. We went up, we were panicking. It was on his birthday in 2017. We went up there the next day. Yeah, isn't that crazy? We walked out of dinner and just everyone said, come outside, there's ash falling. It was like raining, but it was ash, and we knew it was bad. So we went up there the next day, and it was just so devastating. It's hard to explain. We literally started our conversations then. Like, what would it look like if we moved somewhere else? When the only other somewhere else would be here. So what would it look like if we moved to Texas? And so we started the conversations then. We had lots of in-depth conversations about it in 17, and not even knowing that fire season was now a thing. Like, it wasn't just an isolated thing in 17. It's like every year since there's something, and it's all over California, and it's all over other states as well, with the way things are going, with how dry everything is. And so 18 fires again. It really has started affecting our quality of life. And also it was very scared from a business standpoint as well. And it still is. We're constantly watching that. But we talked about it every year. In 19, we said, let's bring the kids. We've got two boys that are 16 and 13 now. So let's take the kids to Texas. Let's go to an A&M game. So we took them to the A&M Alabama game. Y'all can do it. Y'all can do it. We took them to the A&M Alabama game in 19, and we were like, okay. So we started talking about actually moving to College Station. We could live here. We had the conversations again, and it wasn't until 2020 that we said, okay, COVID happened. So a lot of things happened. The fires is the thing that started the conversation. But then as we started having more conversation and COVID happened, that whole thing was just strange. And we were all cooped up forever. Y'all weren't cooped up as long as we were, but we were cooped up forever for like a year and a half.
We
left,
shut down.
But winery shut down.
Shut down the winery.
Your livelihood shut down. All the restaurants, everything was shut down. And then we just started talking about, like, what else is not going great here? Like, the regulations.
How long was that list?
Oh, man. Well, and then you start really digging into it.
At the top was grapes and weather.
Yeah.
And then there were
that's the good list. Yeah. So then it was regulations, which you can talk more about, but also school. Like, the state kept taking money away from education, and we've got two kids that are in school. So there were a lot of considerations that we were talking about. It wasn't just the fires, but that's what started it. And so then we were serious about it at that point. We had talked about it ad nauseum since 17. Like, literally, we had this conversation probably once a quarter, I'd say. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So regulations wise, though, you can kind of just give a tidbit about in terms of running our business, like not small
Well, then it
business
was
friendly.
We were taking it 2020, a whole new world, right? Like, oh, you can do things remotely. Like, I wasn't sure our Fockers would like us living somewhere else. Why are you leaving your vines or the wine or whatever? But it's a whole new perspective for everybody. The workforce, consumers, whatever. Everybody looks at things a little bit differently, and we're like, I don't know, maybe we can do this. So we kept the house there, and we moved. Actually, we arrived Christmas Day of 2020. The boys and I had never seen the house, nor had we ever been to Magnolia.
That is trust.
And we showed up Christmas morning. We're like, hey, new town, new house. And it was great. And we spent that year all the way through the 21 harvest, like, can we do this? Can I do it remotely? Can I be a vacationing winemaker? And it turns out it's the greatest thing ever. And I should have done it 10 years ago. And I get all the wonderful things that you all love about wine and that I love about growing grapes and making wine. I get all the fun stuff, and I don't have to deal with any of the negativity that surrounds it out there. Because there's a lot. I mean, there's just a lot going on out there, and I don't have to deal with it anymore. And it turns out, I was a little upset early on because what I learned really was the vines really don't need me. I took that personally for a handful of months, and it turns out the wine really doesn't either.
Oh, it does too.
Because I don't, once we make the wine, like it sits in barrel and does its thing. You know, I don't go in there all the time. I try not to upset them. I mean, I play them music during harvest while they're aging, and I do all their shit. Okay, well, it depends on the varietal.
Bare Naked Ladies.
So I'm
definitely
a huge Bare Naked Ladies fan.
Ladies. Definitely.
Really great.
The barrels hear that. For sure.
It's pretty eclectic, my musical interests. But whatever, the whole point is what you want is positive energy. Positive energy to the wine. That's what we focus on. And it rewards you back.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So tell us, what are you doing, or how has your business expanded or grown since moving to Texas? What are some of the new opportunities that you've taken advantage of? What are some of the ones maybe on the horizon that you see as opportunities?
That's a great question. It's been awesome. What we found was that leaving the West Coast and being in Houston, we are remarkably closer to our customer base physically. So I've already done day trips to Miami, day trips to Chicago, day trips to Kansas City, like there and back, seeing Fockers and accounts and whatever and things. I've seen more people, you know, in the last 2 years than I did, and let's take COVID out of it, but even before that, in the previous probably 5 years before COVID, just because of location and how fast I can get to people.
And time zone.
And it's awesome.
Yeah.
And then we're getting back to our sort of grassroots of, because relationships is everything to us. Like our entire business, everything is all relationships. And people that I met 20 years ago, 15 years ago, Matthew Pridgeon, who I first met at Mark's on Westheimer. If you all ever went to Mark's.
Yeah.
I did a wine dinner for them in 2005. I made their wine from 05 to 09. If you ever had a Mark's, if you ever had a Mark's bottle of wine, I made that stuff. I said stuff. Thank you. That's a big deal for me.
Look at you keeping them in check.
She's a professor.
I love it.
She has to do this with college students all day.
Oh, I love it.
Makes sense now, doesn't it?
It totally does. Totally does. So we've been reconnecting with people. We've been doing a little bit more wholesale. We're lots of different opportunities. People want to do tastings and they want to do things with the wine, and they want you to. I mean, it's fun. I met Avery over there. I went to a WSET class. I couldn't do that in Napa when I'm there doing everything that we're doing. So, there's all sorts of cool opportunities and stuff. I'm doing private label things for all sorts of different groups and restaurants and whatnot. And
so
great.
That's all great. I know you've also expanded out of wine into vodka. So tell us just briefly about the vodka, Snap Vodka.
Yes.
You see, he said briefly.
Briefly and keep it clean. Never mind. Just tell us briefly.
Yeah, just tell them how you make the spirit.
Here.
You make the spirit.
The Crystal owns a distillery called Texas Ferments. It's at a College Station.
I know. I love all that.
She owns a winery too. It's a winery and distillery on the same piece of property up in College Station. She was able to get the permits, get 2 buildings built, I do all the formulations for her vodka. Took 6 months to do that. In 9 months, we were able to accomplish what took 15 years in California, and I am not kidding you, millions of dollars, 9 months and $50,000. I'm not kidding you.
Because you were in Texas.
That's the calculus.
Yes. I know.
We have the same rights, the same everything as you would have in California, we have in College Station, and that was the $50,000 to $2 million, like 1.8.
Okay, if there's no better commercial for that Texas is business friendly, that's it.
It's ridiculous. They stay out of our way. I just file the monthly reports and whatever. I've never even seen a building official. I've never even seen one. I submit my stuff and
Let's
you
not
go
get
there.
anybody in
I
trouble.
know, and don't
It's so
invite
great.
anybody. Like, you might
Well,
want
it's COVID, so they were doing things through.
delete.
I hope the building inspectors in Brazos County don't lose their job over that.
Are there any here?
I'm not the
Yeah,
one that didn't show up.
But they might listen. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, Eddie, we're just gonna.
yeah.
So good.
Block this from Brazos County. Okay.
Just black
But
out.
so Snap Vodka was born,
That vodka was
So Snap Vodka was born.
and if any of y'all
Can I?
took part in the drink we had tonight, in addition to the wine, there was a Snap Vodka drink there. So hopefully we can start getting it here in Houston soon. I know you're working on that.
Oh yeah, you can get it at Moxie's. You can get it at B&B Butchers. I'll go through the whole list of where you can get the wine and the vodka.
You can get it at Specs on Smith Street.
Specs downtown.
there, downtown. You
Yeah.
can.
So another great story to tell, I think, because you two obviously are proud, successful entrepreneurs. It clearly rubbed off in your offspring because one of your kids, at least, is an entrepreneur now. Carter, tell us a little bit about Carter's venture because we've helped him too with his Flip Crits.
Yes.
So give us a little quick vignette about what that is and where they can be found.
No, you go.
In 2017, Carter was 8 years old, and we were on a vacation, and he came to me with an idea, and he said, "Daddy, I hate my Crocs, and I hate my flip-flops. I'd like to make a flip crit." And I said, "What?" His nickname is Crit, or Critter, Crit for short. And I said, "Well, you got to put together a business plan, buddy." And he goes, "What's a business plan?" And I said, "Well, you got to write the reasons why. Why are you going into business? And then who, what, where, when, blah, blah, blah. You got to write down how you're going to make money. Like, what is this thing about? What are you doing?" Anyway, he went and did this 3-page little business plan. Hilarious. But there was a lot of substance in there. And I sent it off I'd learned a lot of things, and I sent it off to our IP lawyer. And his name is Chris.
Yes, different Chris.
It was really wild. And Chris came back 2 days later, and he's like, "You're not going to believe this, but I think your son could get a utility patent on the design of his shoe." And I said, What? And he goes, "Yeah, not only that, like he's created some words, like that have never been created before." So we could protect those. And I was like, "Yeah, do that." And so Crits was born. Carter owns the word adventurability. He owns sugar foam. He owns all sorts of stuff. And he has a utility patent on this shoe. Anyway, yada, yada, yada. He sells in Nordstrom. You go to Crit. Yeah, if you Google Crits, you'll see the first thing that comes up is
Nordstrom comes up first.
It's Crits.com.
Yeah,
right?
Crits.com. Anyway, he's a cool little dude, and you'll see his videos and all his stuff.
He's 13 now.
He's awesome. We are and in all fairness, what we're trying to do is onshore all of Crits, because we kind of got crushed in. His design is a cement construction, so it's pieced together, lots of different layers and pieces. Vibram outsole to all the different pieces. His EVA foam is made out of sugar cane, byproduct of sugar production out of Brazil. But all those materials went to southern China, and we actually went over there twice to the factories, and Carter worked with everybody, and his designers and everybody that helped him, all his mentors are here in the U.S. Anyway, we're bringing it back to the States and working on the new round of Crits that'll be coming out, because our wine and the vodka, everything we do is made in the USA. Everything. Nice. Except the cork, because we don't grow any cork trees in the U.S. So the Amarim is our supplier, and they're incredible. But we got to get the corks from Portugal. But everything else, all the glass, everything that we do, all comes from the U.S. now, which is great. Yeah.
All right, great. That's amazing stories. So we're going to get a little bit fun and kind of try to wrap.
It hasn't been fun already?
I got long faces.
It just goes by so fast. I know.
So I want to know from both of you, what was your first job?
Like ever?
Ever.
Oh, ice cream. I scooped ice cream at on Dairy Ashford and
Baskin Robbins or what?
No, it was called Yogurt and Cream. Was that Westheimer or Briar Forest? Anyway, it was one of those.
Oh.
And I was 15. Yeah. I don't know if that was legal, but
back then it was.
I don't know. Sure. Anyway, I made like $4 an hour.
Newburgh Pizza Parlor in tiny little Newburgh, Oregon. I was a dishwasher and I cleaned the restaurant.
He's really still good at dishwashing.
I am. It's actually it's cathartic for me.
Yeah.
I do love cleaning. It's part of, if you make really good alcohol, you tend to clean things really well.
You better.
Be careful.
How about that? Little known fact.
Really clean. It all needs to be very
clean.
clean.
You go home tonight and go, what'd you learn? Well, I learned that if you make alcohol,
very sanitary.
Nothing else about the night, but no. Okay.
Takes a lot of beer to make great wine. It's important.
All right, Crystal, since you're the native Texan, Tex-Mex or barbecue?
Oh, Tex-Mex. Queso.
Tex-Mex.
Tex-Mex. Nobody knows what queso is in California. It was very difficult for me.
How'd you live that long?
I made my own.
Yeah, made her own.
I had customers bringing it in for me.
Yeah,
They did, like on dry ice. Back in the day.
Back in the day. That's
But you could do
really
that.
desperate,
I know.
right? Yeah.
I know. It was desperate.
Well,
Desperate
where's your
times.
favorite queso then?
Oh, man. Oh, gosh. You can't ask me that right now because, oof.
Okay.
Okay, I can't. I don't know.
Too much on the
There's-
spot. You
yeah,
don't want to
yeah.
embarrass anybody?
Yeah,
or-
I don't
or
know.
make
There's a lot of,
enemies?
yeah. I
Okay.
can't.
All right, so now let's do some wine education. So I brought a prop
In his pocket.
in my pocket.
Oh, this is
So
gonna
the
be
cork.
good. Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Oh,
lots
you
of
brought a
questions
long
about the
cork.
cork.
All right.
Do you smell it or not, or does it really matter?
You absolutely can. I do.
What do you learn from it by doing that?
There's really just one thing I'm looking for. So there's a compound called trichlorine anisole. We all know it as TCA, if you've ever heard of this, or if you've ever heard the term, the wine is corked. Okay. So there's a compound found in nature. You can also get it if you use any bleach materials in your winery. Don't ever do that. Or your distillery. No bleach. But it's something that can be found in nature, and it's found in cleaning products, bleach. And if it is inside the cork, and you put that into the wine, when it connects with the wine, it will turn your wine into what smells like a dirty, disgusting dog. Or wet, moldy wool, or just like nasty. Okay? And we call that TCA or corked. So you can, if you get a hint of it that's why they open up a bottle at the table and then pour a little bit for you. You're supposed to, it's not whether or not you like it. Listen, you bought that. Just because you don't, because you don't like the wine, you can't send that back. Okay? If it has a flaw in it, if this TCA is in there and it's off, and you're gonna know, because it's nasty. You smell it. Well, it can be faint at times. It's not faint if you smell the end of that cork. If you put the end of that cork up there, you're gonna know. Sometimes I'll just grab the cork and smell it and be like, yeah, that's toast. Now there's anywhere between 2 to 5% of all wines are corked with TCA, and that's coming down every year because we're doing different things. Like, we were one of the very first wineries to get into ND-Tech corks. So this came out of technology from the Amreams. This is awesome. We pay for this. Every single cork goes through a machine that locks it into a chamber, and then it sucks out all of the air, and the cork expands, and then you have this machine just analyzes every single square inch of that cork and tells you whether or not it has any TCA. And then it comes out and they print it on the cork. It has an identifier so that if you buy a $125 bottle of Waugh Cab and we sell it to you, you open it up and you're like, whoa, that's corked. Amream reimburses, we send you a new bottle, which is great, but they reimburse us for the total value of the bottle of wine. So that's called insurance. Which I also learned was really good to have.
Yeah. Okay, so that's it. I mean, what can you learn from maybe how red or
yes? So that tells you right there that if the wine has not bled through the cork, that means it has been stored in the proper temperature. Right? So if the cork has any flaws in it whatsoever, and you put that wine direct sunlight, or you put it in any temperature that's going to rise, the wine will go straight up that cork. Path of least resistance, just like water, right? And so you got to look at that. Is the cork compromised there? That could probably tell you more than likely it was sitting in a temperature that it didn't enjoy.
It's not hot here, though. I don't know why that would happen.
It could be don't leave it on the top of your refrigerator. There's, wine likes to be, I'd say it's got to be under 70 degrees. Okay. I'm not telling you it's got to be 55 degrees. You don't have to get a fancy, cellar. You don't have to do whatever you want to do. You can put it in a closet. A lot of us have a closet that never reaches 70 degrees or whatever. If you want to do that, I'm not going to tell you got to build some fancy thing, but temperature fluctuation will destroy your wine. It doesn't like to just go up and down. And too hot, wine will push right through the cork, and that's what you'll see.
Gotcha. Very good. Okay. Another question. Legs.
Yes.
Right?
I love that.
What does that tell us? Yeah, easy. We're still filming.
I know. I'm so. Oh, sorry.
All right.
I know I'm not close enough to her. I don't like this.
You are
so
fine.
Tell us what we can learn.
Okay,
about the
so
legs
legs are funny. Legs are super funny. They are not. The biggest myth is that people look at the legs and then they determine the quality of the wine. Just don't do that. It's very embarrassing. If you're going to do that, do it with other novices. Do not do it in front of any winemaker. You can do it in front of some somms because they don't know either. But you can, totally kidding. What it's really going to tell you, the reason we use them, like we will use it to try to determine if we're doing a blind tasting, something about the wine. So the width of the legs is going to tell you, and how fast they run is going to tell you how much alcohol and potentially how much sugar is inside of the wine, which will then tell you something about it that you can be like, oh, is that Cab, Pinot, Merlot, whatever? So if they're real thin and they run real fast, really high alcohol. If they stick to the side of the glass, it probably has something in there that could potentially be not natural, or like an additive. Could be added sugar. It could be, there's lots of different things that people add to wine. We do not. We don't use pesticides. We don't use herbicides. We don't irrigate. We are kind of naturalists. There's more things we don't put in the wine than we actually do put in the wine now. But that's all it's gonna tell you. How much alcohol is in there and potentially sugar content. And then you use it if you're trying to identify it in a blind tasting. Otherwise, don't. Like,
Just don't.
oh, look at the legs on that. It's such a great wine.
I hear that a lot, actually.
Don't do
I
that.
do hear that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so then lastly, since we're in Houston, where around here can we find your wines?
Our wine, yes. We don't do any retail, so I'm sorry about that, but I brought my handy list so we didn't forget any of our partners.
Well, in addition to the, I guess, QR codes where you could go to their website and sign up to be a Fokker.
That's correct.
Yes, if you are a Fokker and get Fokked, you have access to everything.
And we have fun, in case y'all didn't notice.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
A little bit. Just
a little bit.
So you can go to some of our favorite places, and B&B Butchers. You can get crystal bubbles by the glass at B&B, which is kind of cool. Uchiko, that just opened. Moxie's. We're the only Zinfandel by the glass at Moxie's. We're also the only Cabernet Franc on the list at Moxie's. You can also get the Snap at Moxie's. They have a new gingerbread snap for the holidays that's launching November 16th. Super cool. Brick's Wine Cellars up in Vintage Park off of 249 has 3 or 4 of our wines. Woodlands Country Club, Carlton Woods Country Club. I think they have 6 of our wines at Carlton Woods. Red Flame up in Magnolia. That's our Cheers. That's where we hang out. Rail and Rye in Navasota. 1860 up in College Station. Texas A&M Hotel and Conference Center now has our wine and the vodka up in College Station. Ocean Prime in Dallas. There's 3 Moxie's locations in and around Dallas up there, and Dallas Petroleum Club if you happen to go up there. They pour our wines by the glass. Our Pinot by the glass.
Yeah.
And then they have our cab, which is kind of cool. And then the vodka specs, we said, M&R Liquors up in Cypress and Spring. They have 3 locations. Tasting Point in Magnolia. Captain Brad's off of 249. They're awesome. You should go see them.
And then our house.
Yes, and then our house. Yes.
My cards are out there. Y'all can just let me know.
There you go.
There
you go.
And BoyarMiller.
Yes. And BoyarMiller. They're stocked now. And Chris's house.
And my house. So yes, we have a good stash in our server room, which doubles as a wine cellar. So it's the right temperature. I just want to thank the 2 of you for agreeing to do this and coming and share your story. This has been amazing.
It's been
fun.
Thank you.
So,
well, I appreciate you.
Thanks
and
for having us. And thank y'all for coming.
We got to meet Steve and Jet and Mr. Miller, and this has been really awesome, and got to network with such cool people, and appreciate you all welcoming Crystal back. And,
thank you.
And letting me tag along.
He's like an honorary Texan.
There you go. We just got to get him back in the boots.
I appreciate you.
So we have time for maybe a question or 2 from the audience. If anyone has a question, if you do have a question, go to the back. We have a microphone so we can hear it. But if not, we do. There is a question. Okay, here we go.
Now I'm nervous.
No, you're not.
You should be concerned.
I saw her double fisting earlier.
Look at him calling you. Oh, now you should really stick it to him.
Yeah,
sure.
No shame in double fisting. We are a firm of hospitality. Yes.
Love it.
You hear a lot about vintages, and the year of the fires got a lot of attention, and you don't want to buy a 17 because the grapes smell like ash or whatever. What can you tell us about your wines and vintages, and are you blending through so that you're not catching the off years, or how are you managing the weather around vintages?
It's a really good question.
That's a
Thank you
great
for asking
question.
that. Yeah, see, yeah.
That
Yes.
was awesome.
You should, but listen to the answer first.
That was so good.
That's a great question.
I'll specifically talk about the first part of that question, which is the smoke taint. And in 17, this is, again, a major myth, right? So it was a very warm year, much like this past year. The fire started on October 8th in 2017. 90% of all vinifera vines and the fruit that comes off of them, all the stuff we drink, had all been harvested 90% prior to October 8th. No issue with 2017. Zero. No real issue in 18. Didn't really have an issue in 19 because all the stuff happened late. It wasn't until 2020 hit, and the irony of that was Napa and Sonoma itself never had any fires in 20. It was, while the fruit was on the vine, it was all coming from outside the counties, different states.
It could be 2 hours away.
But the
3 hours
way
away.
the weather patterns were going in the air came in and it dropped the smoke right down to the ground. And what happens at once veraison, so veraison is a term everybody probably has heard, but all it means is that's the time in August where the grapes turn color, but the skin's like thin. Like they thin down to 1.5 millimeters. And if you get smoke down right in there, it just sits. Then it can incorporate itself. These smoke compounds can incorporate themselves into the skins of the grapes. That you got to be. And so in 2020, we did not bottle a wine. Nothing. 3,000 to 4,000 cases a year, nothing. A whole vintage just lost. And you panic a little bit. Our lawyers are great. Our CPA is really good. And you figure out how to get through that. But I guess this kind of goes back to how we manage vineyards. So there's 2 different ways to manage a vineyard. You can manage it to your business plan, or you can manage it to its natural balance and equilibrium. Okay? And that's what we do. I'm not saying one's better than the other. If you want to make consistently high quality, like really high quality wine, you can't manage the vineyards to your business plan. And what I mean by that is like your distributors in Florida and New York and Illinois and California and Texas are telling you, I need X, Y, and Z cases. And you're like, oh, okay, well, so the vineyard needs to produce this. But the vineyard doesn't want to produce that year. So then you make it. And this is the cool thing about vinifera varietals. They are so amazing. You can essentially make them do whatever you want. You can produce as much fruit, you can produce as little, you can manipulate the hell out of them, and they will allow it. And it's pretty remarkable. What we do, my dad said, you got to have the testicular fortitude to stick to whatever your plan is. Okay? So you got to grow a pair, and you got to maintain some balance. And so what that means is you have to, when the vines wake up in the spring, they want to push a certain amount of fruit. It might not be the quantity that you want. But if you let it go, you're going to make consistent quality wine. But the problem is your production goes like this. And the wholesale market doesn't like that. Direct-to-consumer market loves it. Because in the worst vintages ever, 2011, right? Everybody bashed it. In my entire career, 2011 was the worst by all the writers, the worst thing ever. And yeah, we were supposed to make 2,500 cases that year, and we made 800. How do you survive? Well, you're selling all of that direct to consumer, and you work it out, and the quality just stays. And so when your customers, when you constantly deliver every year, and you constantly deliver, they notice. And we always put the case production on the back of every bottle so they see it. Oh, this one was 275. Must have been a great year. This one, 98. Oh, geez. But when they open it, they're like, oh, yeah, Waugh.
Right.
Yeah, good, right? So you're not sacrificing quality, right? So two different ways. And you just have to figure out what your business plan is. Ours is consistent quality, period.
How many people do you think, this is ridiculous because you don't know this, but just in general, there's a lot of 20 vintages that are out there.
Yeah.
Should they be concerned, do you think? What's the deal with that?
No, because,
they might taste okay, but they might have smoke compounds in them.
Yeah, because it's not everywhere. Like Napa and Sonoma took a beating, right? It really did. Now, Napa and Sonoma, if we put this in perspective, just in California wine production, Napa and Sonoma is 4%. 4% of the entire state is both of them combined.
Okay, that's astounding.
It's very, 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 very small.
Central Coast.
So it's nothing to totally be concerned about. Plus, UC Davis gave us a bunch of protocols that you could use to try to, mitigate the impact from the smoke particles and the taint. It's just, I think you're fine. If you find one, I trust my industry, even the high producing volume producers, I trust them because that stuff is very, very, very hard to do. I might bash a certain producer because I don't drink their style, right? I don't like that, but I won't bash them for their business or it's very hard to make millions of cases of things even taste good, and let alone make it the same every year and do that. It's very, very hard. It's just as hard to make our wine as it is to make 1 million cases of something. So, lots of respect for this industry, and I really don't think they're going to put something out there. That'd be an outlier if somebody pushed something that was just really garbage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good deal. All right.
Good question.
One more.
So I am the wife and mother of 3 Aggies. That's what Crystal, and one of whom is named Ryan. Welcome to the great state of Texas.
That's so great.
My question is, as you know, there are many Texas wineries, including one that shall remain unnamed in Bryan College Station. Have you ever thought about growing grapes in the great state of Texas, and how do you feel about the soil conditions, etc.?
Great question.
We might need more wine up here.
For the winery that will be unnamed, I am meeting Paul next week.
Yeah.
So
I grew up in Bryan.
I know
Paul.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So I will
I
tell
do
him
think
you said
his
hello.
port is used to be one of the better ports around.
In your question, you bring up something that's a really good point, because soil is probably the thing I think about least, because vines, these things are, just straight up magical to start. They do not need, when we all think of farming, we think of really rich soil, and you're thinking, dirt you can get your hands on, and you do all that. But the irony is some of the greatest vineyards in the world have no soil whatsoever, right? They're in all types of rock or clay or nasty stuff. Just things that you walk through and you're like, what? If you ever walked through parts of northern Burgundy or right bank, left bank Bordeaux, or, all sorts of parts of Napa. Napa the cool thing about Napa is every single soil type that and any soil engineers in here, you're probably going to know this, every single soil type
None.
Every single soil type that exists on this planet is found in Napa and Sonoma. Every single one. It's a phenomenal place, but it's not a rich, soily thing. The climate and the weather, super important. And then on top of that, when you get certain weather events, is what is really impactful. So people always ask me, what makes Napa and Sonoma and all these random places where the greatest wines in the world, right? They're just a very small percentage of our landmass in the world, right? Where you make the greatest wines. And they get what you're supposed to get when you're supposed to get it to grow these things. Okay? So then transitioning to Texas, that doesn't happen here. Okay, now with that being said, these vines are awesome. Like you can, and so if you go up to the Panhandle, because most of the great wines in Texas are not grown in Fredericksburg. You know, that's where we go to enjoy and we go to see the wineries and drink the stuff. But like the stuff that wins the awards, right? In Texas, because we're the 4th largest producer of wine in the U.S. It's a big deal.
There you go.
Big deal.
Right?
That's pretty cool.
All of those vineyards are up in the Panhandle. They're all up near Oklahoma. I mean, almost all of them, right? And they're, I mean, all used spectacular for what they are, right? But you want to just be you want to be yourself. Right? You don't want to, it's never going to be any other region, right? New Mexico has become one of the hotbeds of the greatest sparkling productions in the United States, right? Like, things are evolving and it'll change, and you don't become the 4th largest producer in the U.S. because you just make crappy stuff all the time, right? So it's going to get better and better and better. Oh.
Well, so what you're saying is you can't make California wine in Texas.
I can't.
Right?
I can't. Not yet.
No, it's
Not yet.
different. But,
Not yet.
But he
All right.
appreciates all wines for what they are, where they came from, and how they're made. And
Very good. All right. So
Thank you.
we are going to wrap this up. If you want to have additional questions with Ryan or Crystal, the bar is still going to be open back in the lounge. Before we do that, we did have a raffle. So
right.
we have winners of the raffle. Okay, so we had a snap vodka basket. That goes to Chastity Cooper.
oh, yay! Chastity!
And by the way, you had to subscribe to the podcast to be registered for the raffle.
Oh, they're all like,
If you didn't, you can still register or subscribe to the podcast. I would encourage you to please do that. There's QR codes at the tables around you. Please listen. As I said, this is the 40th episode. We have tons of great episodes to listen to. Tons more on the way. Second raffle item goes to Sharon Scott. There you go.
Sharon.
And I think that one was that was wine. That was Waugh wine.
wine.
So,
oh my gosh, how fun!
keep in mind on the way out we have wine tumblers. Please take one and enjoy wine in that. And then I want to thank my amazing team who put this whole thing together.
Oh yeah,
So,
they are amazing.
Yes.
Josie Morgan, Drew Carpenter, Carrie Richards, Eddie Castillo. Some that aren't here: Isha Cotton, Courtney Outland, and Jimmy Johnson. They helped set this whole thing up, as well as our friends at Savage Brands. So thank you for all you do.
Awesome job.
The first time we've done this here, and it won't be the last. This setup's amazing.
It's fun,
Yeah. So if you can, subscribe, as I said, and write a review of the podcast. We'd appreciate that. So I'll see y'all at the bar. It's still open.
Thank y'all for coming. Thank you. It was so fun.